Yes, y'all have a seat.
You may be seated. The Governor would be pleased to field your questions.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, sir. Mr. Where were you $4 trillion ago?
John Starkey, Barnstead, New Hampshire. I take care of cemeteries in the state, and 4 of them. And I'm getting pretty tired of pulling Old Glory down a half-mast. If you're elected president, when can we expect the troops to come home, sir?
Mr. Starkey asked the question of when can we expect to bring our troops home, and he takes care of cemeteries in the state. He said he's tired of taking the flag down to half-staff. And I share that frustration and great sense of loss. Every young Texan who's given that last measure of devotion. I wrote a personal letter to their mother, their father, their wives, their loved ones. There have been far too many. I understand the pain with those families. As an individual who volunteered to wear this country's uniform, I understand our duty as men and women in the military, but also as the Commander-in-Chief of over 20,000 young guardsmen in Texas. I've seen them deployed multiple times. I've been there with the loved ones when they didn't come home. I've visited with them in the dry climates of Afghanistan and over in Iraq. We need to have a very thoughtful conversation with this country over the next 14 months, but clearly have the conversations with our commanders in the field. Never shall we tell our enemies when we're going to depart, but we need to try to bring our young men and women home as soon as we can. Yes, ma'am. From El Paso, Texas. Original.
Not for a long time. Okay.
You got up here where it was cool as fast as you could.
And I like the line.
Yes, ma'am. It's a beautiful place.
Anyway, my husband, I'm a Vietnam widow.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't ever want us to leave a country unless we win it.
Yes, ma'am.
Amen.
Well,
our Vietnam veterans home, nobody wanted to like them. We need to like our military.
Yeah, never again do our young men and women ever need to come home. And thank God this time, I think in the maturity of this country, we have learned some lessons. Whether you support the effort in Afghanistan or in Iraq, Americans support their men and women in uniform. And when they come home, and I want to say thank you to some of you, whether it's projects like Wounded Warrior Project, hundreds of other ways that we help these young men and women. But I think it's very important that this country not forget their veterans. And when it comes to their health care, we've sent these young men and women into battle for 10 years. We've deployed them multiple times. And they're coming home, and a lot of them are scarred. Some physically that you can see and some that you can't see. And we as a country have to commit the resources both to our veterans hospitals, and I think we need to have a conversation about how we expand that to where there are other ways for our veterans to get health care rather than just having to go to a veterans hospital. You know, I don't know all the answers to that yet, but we need to be having that conversation. Yes, ma'am.
Sylvia Smith from Littleton. How do you feel about term limits so that we return the service that our congressmen and senators give to this country into a public service as opposed to the career politicians
Right.
who don't pay any attention
Right.
to the people after a while.
Let me share with you, I respect folks like the senator. He ran for office and he said, I'm only going to run 2 times. But I'm a long way from being through yet. Hold on, brother. But you're next. I'll be brief. But here's the other side of it. Don't you wish you still had him in the United States Senate? And that's my point with term limits. I trust the American people. And when you've got really great people like him in office, now he did this self-imposed. But the idea that we take good, I mean, if we have term limits in place, and you have people that are really serving you well and understand what public service is really all about, that I work for you and not the other way around, then it's fine to leave those people there. Because here's the problem. When we term limit good people like Senator Gordon Humphrey, we turn this country over to the bureaucrats. Now think about that. Bureaucrats will never be responsive to you. And I know there are individuals, but I will suggest to you there aren't that many that are rotten to the core and need to be thrown out. But that's our job. That's our job as engaged Americans. Listen, I am proud of my public service life. From the time I put the uniform of the United States Air Force on, I come from a family that's been in public service. My dad served 28 years as a county commissioner. I spent 14 years in the private sector after I left the Air Force and came home. And I'll put my track record up against anybody from the standpoint of whether it's working in the Air Force, farming and ranching the land, or going back and serving my beloved Texas in the ways that I could. And I think it's really important for us to not let the bureaucrats take over. The EPA is ruining this country with the regulations today because we need to have men and women that will put the foot down and send those bureaucrats away. Anyway, I'm going to cut my, I got on my...
Larry Reese.
Hi, Larry. Howdy.
Hi.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Same as you. Recently, there was finally an audit of the Federal Reserve, and I don't even think that was a full audit. And it came out to $16 trillion that was spent on the bailout of a lot of these banks and institutions. There was some things that were uncovered that were just illegal. Also, loans made for several wars, and also loans made to governments such as South Korea. $16 trillion that, the Federal Reserve is its own private organization, not accountable to anybody in government. And there are people on both sides of the aisle, very conservative and also very liberal, who come and agree on this. When can we get some accountability and have them have the...
January 2013. Let me just address that briefly. The Federal Reserve needs to be transparent. There is no doubt that the decision-making at the Federal Reserve, and I've made some comments, and I'm no great friend of the Federal Reserve, but the fact is this: the Federal Reserve does not need to be making monetary policy to cover up bad fiscal policy by this administration. That's the problem. Yes, sir.
Governor Ron Hibbs, I'm from Glen, New Hampshire, and last year President Obama came off Martha's Vineyard and gave everybody a job speech.
Yes, sir.
Next week he's going to give another job speech. Do you think there be anything in there different from last year's job speech to this year's job speech?
I don't know. If the president wants to make a good job speech, he needs to stand up in front of the American people and say, we're going to repeal Obamacare. If the president wants to get up and make a good job speech, he's going to say, I'm going to stop every regulation that's going through the Federal Registry right now to stop job creation in America. That would be a job speech. My instinct is that's not what we're going to hear. Yes, sir.
What are you going to do to prevent illegals coming across the border, coming as far north as Milford, Mass., running over people?
Yes, sir. His question, if you didn't hear it, was what are you going to do about people coming across the border illegally? I've got a little bit of experience of dealing with that, sir, with a 1,200-mile border, 2/3 of the border between the United States and Mexico. And I'm probably one of the most frustrated people in America because we've been asking for various and sundry assistance from the federal government. You know, it's a sad thing that I've got to call it assistance when it's supposed to be one of the things that the federal government is supposed to do. Securing our border is a constitutional duty of the United States. That is one of the things that the states aren't supposed to do. If they quit spending money on trying to tell us how to educate our children or how to deliver health care and spend that money on securing our border, we'd be a lot better off as a nation. But here's what I will do. You can bet that I will have the National Guard and other military and other law enforcement as needed on the border with the United States and Mexico to take back operational control of that border from the drug cartels. We will stop the drug cartels from having operational control in some areas of that border. We'll have, and in doing that, we'll be working towards having somewhere around 4,500 to 5,000. That's our estimate of what it will take of Border Patrol for boots on the ground. We'll have the aviation assets that are deployed to the border, giving real-time information back to the local law enforcement, the state law enforcement, and the federal law enforcement. You can secure the border with Mexico, and I'm the president that will do it. One more. You're it. Last question.
My name's Jean Ladd, and I come from Guilford. And I wanted to know what your stand is on the whole Israel issue. This president isn't supporting Israel, putting them in deep trouble, and I think as Israel goes,
her question was, what is my stand on Israel, and which is a little broader question from my perspective, and it's just the foreign policy issue, and I'll just give you the quick but broad. America needs to stand with its friends. The oldest democracy in the Middle East, and today they don't know what America would do. The president's statements on the 67 borders I thought were reprehensible from the standpoint of a president of the United States basically trying to tell Israel what to do with their business dealing with borders. I've been personally going to Israel since 1992 and leading economic development and other tours into that country. When I'm the president of the United States, no one in Israel, no one in the United States will wonder where I am. I will be standing with Israel.
Hear, hear.
Thank you all for coming out and being with us today. God bless you.